Hey, Scott Machine Gun Dad. I'm going to pass on a little bit of culture. When I grew up, things were a little bit different. Gee, go figure. My dad grew up in Queens, New York, in Forest Hills, actually. And when you grew up in New York back in the 30s and the 40s, the big thing was the corner deli. And you would go to the corner deli and you'd get your fresh meat. No, this wasn't lunch meat. Like, it was meat sliced for sandwiches, but it wasn't like bologna or stuff you see nowadays in the lunch meat section. So they would go in and they would pick ingredients, and then the guy would make the sandwich and they would eat it there. And that was a huge treat. So when I got older, my dad had come up with a sandwich. So I'm going to tell you the ingredients for the sandwich, because I think if you try it, I think you're really going to like it. It is you start with a soft rye. It could be a Jewish rye, a Reuben rye, depending on how strong you want your rye bread taste. Do not use a dry rye, use a soft rye. Corned beef brisket, pastrami brisket, a creamy coleslaw, and this is the key point, Russian dressing. Not Thousand Island, real Russian dressing. That's it, simple. Corned beef, pastrami, coleslaw, Russian dressing on a soft fry. Usually you got to cut it in half because it's a really sloppy sandwich. You got to put a lot of coleslaw in there. So I made it for Nick and Shannon today because I had some left over. What did you think?
It's a really good sandwich for how simple it is, with it just being 4 ingredients thrown together onto a piece of bread. It's quite good. You don't need to.
Yeah, you don't have to cook anything.
Yeah.
It's just basically, it's a nice cold sandwich. Really, really good in the summer.
You've got everything you need right there on the sandwich. You got your veggies, you got your sauce, you got the Russian sauce, adds a little bit of a more unusual flavor to it. I've never had Russian sauce, never even knew it existed until he pulled it out of the refrigerator. So it adds a different flavor to it. It's got your meat, it's got your bread, it's all there.
Real Russian dressing to me is a richer. It's like a French, but it's richer. A lot of people like to say Thousand Island is Russian. It's not. It's not. Real Russian dressing is not a cream-based dressing. It's more similar in consistency to French, but it doesn't taste like French. Shannon's behind the camera. I'll ask her too.
I loved it. Everything complements each other. I've had Russian dressing. Was like my dad's favorite, but it's been a really long time since I had it because it's not exactly something you can walk into any grocery store and pick up. But yeah, give it a go. You won't be sorry.
Yeah, for me, I live outside of Grove City. I had to drive to Hermitage to find a grocery store that had Russian. None of the local places had it. Even my Walmarts and super Walmarts didn't have it. The other tip is you can make it with lunch meat. It is still good, but it's not great. It's great with brisket because the consistency of the meat blends much better with the coleslaw and the Russian, whereas the lunch meat has a tendency to divide the flavors. The brisket combines the flavors. So like literally, if you bite into the sandwich, as you're chewing it, it changes. You'll start with the rye bread, and then you'll pick up the coleslaw, the corned beef, the pastrami, and the Russian dressing to me was the last thing I picked up. But when you end, depending on how strong your rye bread is, the rye bread comes back. It's a really good sandwich. It's my passing on a little bit of culture and a little bit of my family history, and if you're lucky enough to have a decent deli, you really ought to check it out. It's not a gun thing, but thanks for coming to the channel.